"I can't believe it. Is this for real? Look over there. There's circles in the water." John could not believe his eyes. What was supposed to be a quiet holiday in Norway was suddenly interrupted by the frightening sight of massive circles appearing in the water. The guests of the hotel were in shock. People started screaming and quickly grabbed their phones to record this scary phenomenon. What was that caused these circles? Before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. It was around 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning on a deck of a small hotel in a quiet Norwegian town. It was never very busy there, and this day was no different. The few guests that were there were enjoying the view while eating breakfast. But then the silence was interrupted by a loud scream at the other part of the lake. John, one of the hotel guests, immediately got up to find out if he could see what was happening. John walked to the water. His dog and a few hotel guests followed him quickly. While John was looking to the other side of the fjord to look where the scream came from, the other guests noticed something very different. They started pointing at some very big circles that started showing in the water. Then they heard a second scream. Then John spotted the location where the screams came from. It was quite far, but he could see that there were two kids on the other side, and it seemed they were in trouble. Finally, John noticed the circles in the water as well. What happened? Could there be another kid in the water? John knew he had to take action. While he took this vacation to finally take some rest after a very bad burnout, he knew this would not be a day of resting. John ran inside the hotel to ask the owner how he could reach the other side of the lake quickly. But what exactly was happening at the other side of the lake? And what was in the lake? A few hours earlier, Eric, 42, a father of two, went on an early morning hike with his two children, Björn, 9, and Anna, 7. He often took them out in nature to teach them about the forest and because they both loved exploring so much. But this day, it seemed that everything that could go wrong did go wrong. After an hour of walking and climbing, Eric had to grab his map to see if they were still going in the right direction. But while he was standing with his compass and his map, which was way too big, Bjorn and Anna decided to go exploring on their own. And when Eric finally found out where they had to go, he looked up and saw that he had lost Bjorn and Anna. While Eric was busy with the map, Bjorn and Anna had spotted a little trail that led to the water. They figured their father would easily find them, so they left without telling him. So they started walking towards the path, but it was very steep and slippery. They decided to hold hands to support each other, but then Bjorn lost grip and fell, dragging Anna down with him. This is where they first screamed. When Eric heard the scream, he heard which direction they had gone, and he quickly started running towards the sound. But at the exact same spot where Bjorn and Anna had fallen, he also slipped and fell right next to Bjorn and Anna. The water was just a few meters below them, and if they would have fallen a bit more, they would have been in the water now. But when they looked down into the water, Anna started screaming again. Meanwhile, on the other side of the lake, John has just heard from the hotel owner that it is best to use a boat to get to the other side of the fjord. Luckily, the old man has an old boat in his shed. But now they had to get this boat ready so they could get to the other side. The boat was quite heavy, so John shouted for help. A few hotel guests came to help carry the boat to the water. John felt like they had no time to lose and urged everybody to hurry. After a few minutes, the boat was in the water and the engine was attached, but a new problem arose. When John tried to start the engine, nothing happened. He quickly removed the fuel cap and found out there was no fuel in the boat. While somebody else held the boat in its place, John ran back to the hotel owner to ask for a jerry can of fuel, but the hotel owner had some bad news. He had no jerry can with fuel, so John had to improvise. Luckily, the old man did have a long tube and a bucket for him, so John quickly ran to his car to extract some fuel from the gas tank so they could use it in the boat. This process took him longer than he had wished for, but at least he was finally ready to go to the other side. Meanwhile, on the other side, Eric and his children tried to find ways to get back to the path, but they could not climb up, and going down was no option either, as they had just seen something in the water that they'd rather stay far away from. But they started to calm down as soon as they saw the boat with John coming closer. Since it was a pretty small boat, John had decided it would be best if only he and his dog went out to the other side in case there were more people he needed to save than he anticipated. The fjord was not too big, so it should not be too long until he'd reach the other side, but the suspicious circles in the water made him a bit scared, so he gave it everything he got to reach the other side quickly. John shouted at Eric, "Do you speak English? Are you guys safe? What happened?" With a heavy Norwegian accent, Eric responded, "Yeah, we're okay. We just need to figure out how to get out of here." John said, "You have to jump in the water. It is very deep. Then I can get you in the boat." But when Eric told this to his children, Anna's eyes opened wide and she walked away from the lead. She was scared. She told her father, "Daddy, haven't you seen the big monster in the water? I can't jump in there." "Big monster?" he replied. "What are you talking about?" Then they looked into the water again, and now Eric turned as pale as he could be when he finally understood what Anna was talking about. While Eric was very scared of the big creature they saw swimming in the water, he also knew they had to get into the boat or they could not get away. So when he saw the creature had moved a bit further, he threw his bag into the boat, grabbed Bjorn and Anna, and took a big jump into the water. It seemed that everyone had calmed down, but halfway on the fjord, John's dog started barking. John slowed down and tried looking around to see what his dog was reacting to. Meanwhile, Anna moved closer to her father and whispered, "Daddy, I'm scared. Is that the big creature?" Then John finally saw something huge moving in the water, and his mouth fell wide open. A moment later, John heard a big bang, and the boat was lifted a bit. Everybody screamed, and John's dog started barking loudly. John moved to the side of the boat, looked in the water, and there he finally saw what had hit them. He looked a whale right in its eyes. The whale had hit the boat's propeller and had a pretty big wound on its head. And not only the whale was damaged, the boat as well. The engine wouldn't start again. Bjorn and Anna were panicking. A big whale was attacking the boat and the boat was broken. How could they get away? Luckily, John brought some oars which he and Eric could use to row the boat back to the hotel. Meanwhile, the whale had moved a bit further from the boat, but it kept putting his head above water, and John couldn't help but think that the whale needed help. He should not be here in the first place, but how on earth could they even try to help the whale? Eric told John he has only seen a whale this far from sea one time, and that time the whale unfortunately did not make it back and died. John knew this time had to be different. He told Eric they had to come up with a plan to save the whale, and Eric immediately started calling some friends that might help. They made a list of things that had to happen. First, the whale should get medical help and food, otherwise it would probably not make it very long. Then they would have to find a way to guide the whale back to the sea in a safe way. After writing everything down, John said, "I think we can actually pull this off. Let's start right away." While Eric was calling some friends to come over and help, John started calling medical organizations that might be able to help them. They planned to go back to the whale the next morning. The doctors and medical specialists should arrive by then as well. The next morning, when everybody had arrived, they could finally go to the whale to see how they could help it. The specialists found out it was a very young whale, and luckily, it was pretty calm. They could give him antibiotics, and they treated its wound. They said it would take a week before he was ready to be moved towards the sea. A week later, they all gathered again to start guiding the whale back to the sea. John had stayed at the lake the whole week to watch if everything was going well with the whale. Luckily, it was now strong enough to start swimming back, so they gathered the boats. But what if the whale would hot a boat again? Luckily, the rescue team thought of that as well, and they had attached big steel bars around the propellers so the whale would not be able to get hurt by them again. Now they could start moving it back. Luckily, the whale followed them quite easily, and in just a few hours the whale had returned to the sea where it could look for other whales.